Hey everyone, this is our last week on rational numbers. Next week we're going to be switching it up a bit. But this week we're talking about multiplying and dividing rational numbers. And so there's a couple things you're going to need to pay attention to. One is that you remember how to multiply and divide fractions and decimals, which is something that you guys talked about in 6th grade. But this year we're adding in positives and negatives. So you have to be careful with those things. So when you are multiplying and dividing integers or positive and negative numbers, you have to remember that if they are both positive, in other words, you're multiplying positive times a positive, or you could be dividing positive divided by a positive, it is going to be positive. Now, if you have both negative signs, remember negative means the opposite, so the opposite of, if you're multiplying negative times a negative, well, that's also positive. The only time that you're going to end up with a negative answer when you're multiplying and dividing is when you have a positive and negative. So if you have like a positive times a negative, or a negative times a positive, or any of these could be written as division, this is going to equal a negative answer, and this is going to equal a negative answer. The other kind of easier, simpler way to think about this is if you have same sign, you are going to have a positive answer. So that means either both positive or both negative, you're going to get a positive answer. If you have different signs, your answer is going to be negative. So that's going to be important for what we're doing. Okay? All right. So let's take a look at this problem. I notice I've got negative 1/4 times negative 4/3. So when I am multiplying, I can start with the numbers or I can start with the symbols. When I'm multiplying, I do not have to do anything to change these fractions. I could simplify if I wanted. These, you can't simplify these, but I can just multiply the numerators and then the denominators. So 1 times 4 is 4. And then on the bottom, I've got, for the denominators, 4 times 3, which is 12. Okay? So if I 12 on the bottom. So now, cool, I multiplied the numerators and I multiplied the denominators, but I have to remember that I have to pay attention to the fact that these were both negative to start with. So remember, if I've got the same sign, my answer is going to be positive because this negative means the opposite of that negative, which makes the answer positive. So my answer is 4/12, but now I've got to see, is there anything I can simplify 4/12 by? And there is. I can think, okay, what can I divide 4 and 12 by? I can divide 4 by 4. And I can also divide 12 by 4. So I'm going to do that, and I get my answer. 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. It is a positive 1/3 as the answer. All right, for this problem, I've got to, again, pay attention to my signs. I'm going to take care of the sign at the end. I'm going to do the multiplication first. So when you are multiplying decimals, you do not have to line up the decimal points. So I'm just going to start writing this. 0 and 4/10 times, you have to line up the right side. So I want these to all be, these to be in the same column because they're the right side of the number. So I've got 4/10 times negative 3/100, and I'm just going to start multiplying. So 3 times 4 is 12. Put that there. Now I regroup that 1, which is actually, in this case, going to be a 1/100th. So 4 times 3 was 12. I wrote the 2 there and the 1 up there. Now 3 times 0 is 0, plus that 1 goes there. Now I have multiplied the 3 times the 4, and I have also multiplied the 3 times the 0. Now I move on to the next number to multiply. Well, the next number to multiply is 0, so that's going to be 0, 0, and then I move on to the next one, 0, 0. So I don't really even have to worry about those. I'm just going to stop right now where I'm at. Now, how you finish multiplying this is you think, okay, how many total decimal places were in this problem? There was 1 decimal place there and 2 decimal places there. So there was 1 decimal place here, 2 decimal places there. Altogether, that is 3 decimal places. So my answer has to have 3 decimal places. 1, 2, 3. Now, ask yourself, what goes in this empty spot? If you can tell me what goes in that empty spot, good job. What goes in that empty spot is a 0 placeholder. Okay, so our answer is 12 thousandths. Now, we have to be super careful because we have to go back and check what to do with the signs. One was negative, one was positive because it didn't have a symbol out front. So when they have different signs, one negative and one positive, our answer is going to be negative. So our answer is negative 12 thousandths. All right, next problem. So, super important to remember here is that dividing is a little bit different than multiplying when you're talking about fractions. And the difference is that when you divide fractions, that is the same as multiplying the reciprocal of this number, which sounds really complicated, but really all that means is, I don't know if you guys remember, but we talked about keep, change, flip. And that is how you divide fractions. So you keep the first value, negative 7/10. You change I want to get rid of that. So this is going to be negative 7/10 because we're keeping negative 7/10. You change the division to multiplication. And you flip the second fraction, and that's called using the reciprocal. Reciprocal means flipped or opposite. So the reciprocal of 2/5 is 5/2. Okay, so now we've got a problem that we can solve. I can do negative 7/10 times 5/2 a lot easier, and I just have to multiply across. So 7 times 5, that is 35. And then 10 times 2 is 20. Now I've got to ask myself, did they have the same sign or did they have different signs? Well, this one is negative and this one is positive because it doesn't have a sign. So they have different signs. So my answer has to be negative. Now I have to ask, can I simplify this at all? Is there anything I can divide 35 and 20 by? The answer is yes. I can divide 35 and 20 by 5. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So 35 divided by 5 is, I'm going to block this off here. 35 divided by 5 is 7. So I'm going to have 7. Sorry, it's getting cramped, you guys. 7, and then 20 divided by 5 is 4. So our answer is 7/4. But wait, don't forget this negative right here. So our answer has to be negative 7/4. The other way that you could write this is negative 7/4 is 7/4 is more than 1 whole. So you could rewrite this as negative 1 whole, because 4 fits into 7 1 whole time, with 3/4 left over. So negative 7/4 or negative 1 3/4. All right, last one, and this one is, I kind of labeled this one a challenge. The reason I labeled this one a challenge is not because there's something that you don't know how to do in this, it's just because there's a couple more steps. So I noticed that these parentheses are telling me to multiply. I'm going to have to multiply, which I can do, except for they aren't normal fractions where you can multiply the numerators times the denominators. This one doesn't even have a numerator, or it has a numerator, it doesn't have its denominator, and this one is a mixed number, so I can't just multiply straight across like I'm used to being able to do it. So we have to turn those into fractions that I can just multiply straight across on. So Whenever I have a whole number, I know automatically that the denominator is 1. So there you go, turn that one into a fraction that's easier to multiply. And so on the next, on -1 and 1/4, I've got to think, how can I turn that into a fraction where it's called an improper fraction, where the top is bigger than the bottom and it doesn't have the whole number out front, it's all just shown as the one fraction piece. So I know that this one right here, if I broke it into 4 pieces, it would be the same as 4/4. 1 is the same as 4/4. So in this one, I've got 4/4. So this is 4/4 plus this 1/4. So 4/4 plus 1/4, 4/4 plus 1/4 is going to be 5/4. Okay, and actually I'm going to write the whole thing. Sorry for going back and forth so much. So I've got -2/1 times negative, instead of -1 and 1/4, I'm going to write it as 5/4. Now I have two fractions that I can multiply straight across. So I'm going to rewrite it, -2/1 times -5/4. And now I can multiply straight across. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 4 is 4. I have a negative and a negative, so they have the same sign. So same sign means positive answer, so I'm going to leave it positive. Now, is there any way that I can simplify 10/4? Is there anything I can divide 10 and 4 by? Yes, I can divide 10 and 4 by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and you could leave it as an improper fraction, or you could simplify it even further and say, okay, can I make this a mixed number with a whole numbers, and say, okay, well, 5 halves, if I have 5 halves, I have definitely more than one whole. I have 2 fits into 5 2 whole times with 1/2 left over. So this is your answer. Big Ideas would like it like this most likely. They might take the 5 halves, but usually how you want to put your answer is as a mixed number, which is this answer right here. Okay, like I said, this is the last week of rational number work, so keep going. Remember to email me any questions that you have. Good job, guys. You're almost there.